I'm 43, divorced, and have one child, my son, Tyler. I had him young, barely 24, and I've basically been a single parent since he was 5. His dad dipped out of the picture years ago. Tyler's always been a good kid, quiet, respectful, kept to himself, got decent grades, didn't party much. He's now 19 and just started community college while still living at home. We've had our ups and downs, but nothing that ever made me think he'd do something this reckless. A few weeks ago, I got a phone call that completely flipped my world upside down. It was around 10 p.m. I was watching a show when his number popped up. Nothing unusual, until I picked up and immediately heard panic in his voice. Not the kind it comes from getting... No, this was something. He just blurted it out. A woman was pregnant, and it wasn't some random girl from school. It was someone he'd met at a woman I didn't even know existed, and her name was Michelle. She was 35. That's not a type. He's 19. She's 35. I froze. I didn't even know how to process it. I asked the obvious, was he absolutely sure it was his? And he said yes. Apparently, they'd been hooking up for a few months in secret. He met her through a part-time job he did over the summer. He was a supervisor. Not his, technically, but close enough. He told me she trapped in. They both were. She was 8 weeks along. And then, almost like he asked me, do you think she could live here? Just for a little while? I actually was joking. He wasn't. That's how this started. I couldn't even respond at first. I think I laughed. Like one of those disbelieving, hollow laughs where your brain is trying to buffer the absurdity of what you just heard. He wanted to bring a 35-year-old pregnant, who he got pregnant, to live in my house. A woman I'd never met. A woman almost my age. Into my home. With me. I told him no. Immediately. Not a discussion. Not happening. He didn't get angry. Just quiet. He said Michelle had just lost her job and was staying with a friend temporarily, but was about to be kicked out because the friend had issues with her being pregnant. I could already hear the guilt angle creeping in. He started saying things like, she has nowhere to go and we can't just leave her on the street. I said again, no. Then he asked me if I'd at least meet her. Just talk to her, he said. You'll see she's not crazy. I didn't want to, but I said yes. Honestly, I needed to see this woman for myself. We set up a meeting for the next evening. I thought she'd come nervous, polite, maybe a little remorseful, considering the situation. Instead, Michelle walked in like she was doing me a favor. Big smile, confident body language, didn't even apologize for the situation. Just launched into small talk about how young I looked and how mature Tyler was for his age. She sat on my couch, pregnant with my teenage son's baby, and started talking about nursery themes. I was in some kind of nightmare. I asked her straight, what exactly are you expecting? She didn't hesitate. Said she wanted a safe place for a few months while she sorted out her living situation, that she didn't want to be a burden, but that she and the baby would benefit from having a supportive environment. I think she actually used the word village. Tyler just sat there nodding, like this was a group project and they were presenting their plan to the teacher. I kept it civil. I nodded. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anyone out. I told them I'd think about it and get back to them the next day. But when they left, I sat at my kitchen table for a solid hour in silence, because I realized something terrifying. They weren't asking. They were expecting. This wasn't just about giving someone a couch to crash. They were trying to lay the groundwork for me to become the default caretaker. Again. And I hadn't even wrapped my head around the worst part yet. What if this woman wasn't even telling the full truth? Let me know when you're ready for part 3. It gets even weirder. So after that house meeting, I barely slept. I kept replaying everything in my mind. How she spoke, how calm Tyler seemed, how casually they treated this like a minor life hiccup, instead of what it actually was. A full-on disaster. The next morning, I called out of work. I needed space to think, and I also needed to do something I never thought I'd have to do. Dig into my own son's life behind his back. I started with her, Michelle. I knew her full name from when she came over, so I searched her online. Nothing criminal came up, just a few social media accounts, a couple tagged photos from work events, nothing alarming. But when I checked her LinkedIn page, that's when something weird stood out. She still listed her job at the company Tyler had worked at, the same job she supposedly lost weeks ago. Okay, maybe it just hadn't been updated. But then I checked her Facebook. On her most recent post, just 4 days before, she'd uploaded a photo of her standing in the office with a group of coworkers. The caption said, "End of quarter hustle, wasyash teamwork." So, she still had her. Why lie? I sat with that. Then I messaged Tyler, asking him to come. I didn't mention what I'd found, just told him I needed to talk. Alone. He came home looking defensive already. Sat down, arms crossed. I asked him, did Michelle lose? Said she was about to, but technically she was anticipating let go of drama with. I asked if she'd said that specifically. He said he didn't know. She was stressed and he assumed. Then I asked to see the ultrasound. You'd think that would be easy, right? I mean, she was supposedly 8 or 9 weeks pregnant by now. Tyler froze. Said he hadn't seen one yet. She told him her first scan was coming up and that the doctor said everything was progressing normally. I asked, had she shown him any medical proof at all? He looked down and mumbled, no, but I believe her. I stared at him, completely dumbfounded. He barely knew this woman. He had never met her family. Hadn't been to a doctor's appointment, hadn't seen a pregnancy test, hadn't seen a single ultrasound, and she was more than 2 months in? I felt like I was going to pass out. And then he said something that made me realize just how far gone he was. He said, even if she's not pregnant anymore, maybe she was. She's still important to me. What? It hit me in that moment. He was emotionally locked in. Whether the pregnancy was real or not, Michelle had a hold on. She'd gotten deep into his head, and now he was tangled up in something way over his maturity level. I realized I had a serious problem on my hands. Not just the pregnancy, but the possibility that my teenage son was being manipulated by a woman old enough to know better. After that conversation, I knew I had to start doing what Tyler clearly wasn't doing. Asking questions Michelle didn't want anyone asking. I don't like getting involved in my adult son's personal relationships, but this wasn't normal. This wasn't some college fling or high school drama. This was a grown woman with a supposed pregnancy, no proof, and a story that was starting to unravel with every layer I peeled back. I decided to go back to her social media, this time not just skimming, really looking. Scrolling through every post, every comment, every tag. That's when I noticed something that gave me chills. Back in May, about 2 months before Tyler said they started talking, Michelle had posted a picture of a young boy, 5 or 6 years. The caption read, "My every..." Okay, so she had a kid. Not a shocker, but not something she or Tyler had ever mentioned. In fact, Tyler once told me she said she wasn't sure she ever wanted kids. This wasn't a baby pic either. The kid looked current. I clicked through her photos, and boom, there he was again. More photos. Same boy. Some with her, some with what looked like a man. A bit older, maybe early 40s. Definitely not a brother or friend. Way too cozy. One of the captions literally said, "Family Day." So now I had a few more pieces of the puzzle. Michelle already had a child, and Michelle apparently had, or recently had, a partner. I didn't tell Tyler right away. I needed to be 100% sure before I accused her of anything, so I went deeper. I checked the tagged photos again and found one that led me to the man in the picture. His profile wasn't private, and the first post I saw on his page was dated less than a month ago. A photo of the same little boy sitting on his lap with the caption, "Weekend with my guy. Miss him already? Miss him already?" Was Michelle restricting visits? Was she still in a relationship with this guy? I kept scrolling, and there it was. An old anniversary post from this guy to Michelle from last year. Romantic, sappy, nauseating. Called her his rock, his home, the best mom to their son. He even tagged her. So unless they had some dramatic breakup no one mentioned, it looked like Michelle hadn't just been lying to Tyler. She'd been living a double life. I didn't sleep that. I kept going over her lies, the missing ultrasound, the hidden child, the secret boyfriend and husband. Tyler had no idea. I kept thinking, how deep is he in? Has she lied about everything? Is he the only one being lied? Or am I played too? The next morning I asked Tyler to have breakfast with me. I wanted to do it somewhere neutral, public. I figured it would keep things from getting too heated. We went to a diner near our house, sat in a booth by the window. He looked tired, like he hadn't been sleeping either. I didn't waste time. I told him everything I found. I showed him the pictures of Michelle with the boy, with the man, the anniversary post. I laid it all out, not angrily, not accusing, just calm and steady. Tyler's face went pale. He kept blinking like he was trying to process a language he didn't speak. I asked him flat out, "Did you know she had a kid?" He shook his head. "No." "Did you know she was in a relationship with someone else recently?" Another no. This one quieter. He looked like a kid again. Not a 19-year-old trying to play house with a grown woman. Just my son. Stunned. Embarrassed. Lost. He mumbled something like, maybe they broke up. But I could tell even he didn't believe it. I pressed him. Had she ever shown him proof of the pregnancy? An appointment? A test? Even a receipt for vitamins? Still no. Then I asked the question I was afraid of. Did she ever ask you for money? And that's when he finally cracked. He nodded. Once. Barely. But it was enough. Apparently, she hadn't asked directly. She just kept hinting that she was stressed about bills, that her friend was kicking her out, that her work hours got cut, that buying baby stuff early would be smart. She kept planting little seeds. And Tyler, being the kind-hearted, painfully naive person he is, offered. He gave her money. Not a lot, he said. Maybe a few hundred. He couldn't even remember how much. He just wanted to help. He said she always made him feel important, like he was needed. I felt sick. This wasn't just some awkward age gap fling anymore. This woman was manipulating my son. Financially, emotionally, possibly even sexually if we're being honest. Because yes, Tyler may be legally an adult, but in terms of life experience, he was a high schooler, and she was playing him like a pro. He asked me what to do, and here's where I'll be honest. I didn't have the perfect answer. I told him he needed to confront her. Not via text, not with me present, but face to face, like an adult. I said, "You want to be a father? This is what that means. You ask hard questions. You demand answers. You don't just hand over money and take everything at face value." And then he asked me a question that broke my heart. He looked at me and said, "What if she was never pregnant at all?" Tyler agreed to confront her. He was nervous, jittery, kept fidgeting with his sleeves like he was walking into a courtroom instead of a conversation. But I told him, you need to see who she really is when the act drops. No more soft questions. No more passivity. He had to press. He called her that night and told her to meet at the park. Neutral ground. Public. Safe. I stayed out of it. This was his moment. But not gonna lie, I parked a block away and waited, just in case. He was gone for about 40 minutes. When he finally came back to the car, he looked like someone who'd just been hit by a train. He didn't speak right away. He just got in, closed the door, stared out the windshield, and then said, she admitted it, she lied. I asked him to start from the top. Here's what he told me. He confronted her calmly, told her he had questions, that he'd seen her social media, that he knew she had a child, that he'd found photos of her with the other man, that he couldn't ignore the timeline, and something didn't feel right. At first, she denied everything, said the man was just an ex she co-parents with, said the pictures were old, said the kid was her nephew. Seriously? Her nephew? But Tyler didn't let it go. He told her she needed to show proof of the pregnancy. Not later, not next week, now. And that's when her whole tone shifted. She got angry, defensive, said she couldn't believe he was interrogating her like a criminal, and that if he didn't trust women, then maybe he wasn't ready to be a father. He told her he wasn't going to send another dollar. That until she showed something, anything, he was done. That's when she cracked. She admitted she had taken a test, a home test, and it was negative, but she felt pregnant, and she said sometimes those early results are wrong. She insisted she had all the symptoms, said she just knew her body. Then, without any prompting, she admitted she'd been late on purpose, intentionally, said she wanted to see how serious he was. That's when Tyler realized she was never pregnant. There was no baby, no proof, no ultrasound, no appointment, nothing, just a lie. A very big, very calculated lie. And all those hints about money? Yeah, not for diapers, not for rent, for control. I'll never forget the look on Tyler's face when he told me the truth. He wasn't just heartbroken, he was humiliated. He'd fallen for it, believed every word, offered his savings, imagined himself raising a baby with a woman nearly twice his age, all for nothing. And it would have ended there. He would have walked away, learned a painful lesson, and moved on. Except Michelle didn't let it end. 2 days later, she showed up at our house. No warning, no call, nothing. I was in the middle of making dinner when I heard a knock at the door, and there she was, standing there with a sad little smile, holding a brown paper bag like she was dropping off muffins for a neighbor. I didn't even open the screen. I asked what she wanted. She said she came to apologize, said she felt terrible at how things ended with Tyler, just needed closure, claimed she wanted to make sure he was okay, that it wasn't about money, that she understood boundaries now. It was all delivered, soft, syrupy tone. She was the victim. I told her she needed to leave, that Tyler didn't want to see her, that she had no reason to be on our... Then, she smirked. I swear it was like a mask drop. She looked me right in the eye and said, he's an adult. He can make his own choice. Unless you want to raise that baby yourself, I suggest you stay out of it. I stared at her, stunned. You told him you weren't pregnant, I said, and she just shrugged. Maybe I was, maybe I wasn't. Bodies are tricky. That's when I realized she hadn't just lied. She enjoyed it. This wasn't confusion. This was a game. I told her, flat out, if she didn't leave, I was calling the police. She took a breath like she was going to argue, then smiled again, sweet as sugar, and walked off the porch like nothing happened. I watched her get in her car and drive away, still gripping that paper bag of whatever the hell like she was the one wronged. Tyler was in his room the whole time. I didn't tell him she came by. Not yet. He'd had enough. But that's when I knew she wasn't done. After she left my porch that day, I expected her to disappear, go back to whatever mess of a life she'd been hiding behind lies and baby stories. But Michelle wasn't done. She was just getting started. It was 3 days later when I got a call, from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but I picked up, and the voice on the other end didn't introduce himself. He just asked flatly, "Are you Tyler's mom?" I said yes. He replied, "I think we need to talk about Michelle." I stepped out onto the porch, heart already racing. Turns out this man, his name was Eric, was the same guy I'd seen on Michelle's Facebook, the one in all those family photos with the kid, the co-parent, or ex, or whoever she'd told Tyler he was. Except he wasn't her ex. He was her husband, her actual legal husband. They'd been separated, not divorced, but still very much tied up financially and legally. According to Eric, they were going through a messy situation involving custody of their son, and Michelle had a history of pulling stunts when things weren't going her way. He told me that 2 weeks ago he was notified Michelle had mentioned a new relationship during one of their custody mediation meetings, said she was starting a new life with a younger guy, that she might be pregnant again. Eric said he didn't think much of it, until she casually told the mediator that the new baby's grandparents were excited to help, and that she might move in with them. That's when he decided to look us up. I asked him, was she ever pregnant? He said, no. Not unless she got pregnant and unpregnant within 24 hours. She hasn't seen a doctor in months. Then he dropped the real bomb. Michelle wasn't trying to trap Tyler for love, or attention, or even control. She was trying to paint herself as settled and supported, with a new man, a new baby, and a stable home, to win full custody of her son. She was going to use Tyler, and by extension me, as props. She wanted to put my name and address on paperwork. She wanted to claim she had a stable household. She was going to march into court and say she had a supportive new family and a second child on the way, all to show she was more fit than Eric. It wasn't just manipulation, it was a legal weapon, and if Tyler had moved her in, if I'd said yes, she could have dragged us into a custody battle we had no part in. Eric was calm, but furious, said this wasn't the first time she pulled something like this, dragging new partners into her drama, inventing pregnancies, faking financial hardships. But this time, she got sloppy. She tried it with someone who had a mother that didn't buy her act. I waited a day before telling Tyler. I needed to figure out how to say it without crushing what was left of his self-worth. I sat him down at the kitchen table, same table where he'd eaten cereal every morning for the last 19 years, and laid it out. Slowly, calmly, no blame, just facts. That Michelle wasn't pregnant, that she was married, that she had a child, and that she was trying to use him and me to gain full custody by faking a new family unit. At first he didn't speak, just stared ahead, blinking like he was trying to wake up. Then, his voice barely above a whisper, he asked, was any of it real? I told him honestly, I don't think so. Maybe she saw him as a way out. Maybe she was just trying to prove to herself she could still control someone. But love? Truth? A real relationship? No, it wasn't real. He nodded. Then he stood up, walked to the sink, and stood there for a long time, back turned, shoulders shaking. I thought he was crying, but when he turned around, his face wasn't red. It wasn't tear-streaked. He looked steady. He told me he wanted to fix it. Not for her. Not even for himself. For the kid. Because as much as he'd been lied to, manipulated, and embarrassed, there was still a child in the middle of all this. And if Michelle was the kind of person to lie about a pregnancy and use someone like him as a pawn, what was she doing to her own son? He asked me, would you come with me to talk to Eric? I just want to help if I can. I was stunned. After everything she'd done to him, he wanted to help her kid. We met up with Eric the next day. Neutral spot. A coffee shop by the courthouse. Tyler was quiet at first, but when Eric sat down, he looked him in the eye and said, I didn't know about any of it, but if there's anything I can do to help your case, not for revenge, just to make sure your son's okay, tell me. Eric was grateful, but cautious. He asked Tyler a few questions, confirmed timeline, and told him he might be asked to give a statement. Nothing legal yet, just an affidavit to confirm Michelle's deception. Tyler agreed, without hesitation. I've never been prouder of him. Not because he was brave, but because he didn't let bitterness win. Things moved fast after Tyler gave his statement. Eric took it to his lawyer, who planned to use it in the next custody hearing. We made it clear. We wanted nothing to do with Michelle ever again. Tyler blocked her number. I blocked her on everything too. It was quiet for a week. No calls, no texts, no mysterious paper bags on my porch. And then, on a rainy Tuesday morning, just as I was coming back from the grocery store, I saw a car parked across the street from our house. It was hers. She didn't get out. She just sat there, windows up, engine running, watching. I stood on my porch, arms crossed, groceries still in the trunk, and stared right back. I wasn't afraid. I was done being afraid. I was done being polite. And I guess she knew it, because after a minute, she pulled away. That was the last time I saw her. A few weeks later, Eric texted me. He'd won temporary full custody. Michelle's visitation was now supervised. Her attempts to fabricate a family had backfired, and the judge had apparently read Tyler's statement out loud during the hearing. Tyler didn't celebrate. He didn't gloat. He just nodded and said, good. Since then, we've rebuilt. Slowly. Tyler started therapy. He's back in school, part-time, and working a new job. He barely talks about me, except in passing. But I know the wounds are there. He trusted someone who used him like a prop in her legal that leaves a scar. As for me, I still replay it sometimes. The night he told me about the pregnancy, the moment she smiled on my porch, the look on his face when the truth came, and I still wonder, what if I hadn't asked questions? What if I'd let her move in? What if I had been too afraid to push back? It scares me, because Michelle was clever, calculated, calm. If this happened to us, it could happen to anyone. And now, anytime someone new comes into Tyler's life, I watch a little more closely than, not because I don't trust him, but because I know how easily people like her slip through the cracks. The truth is, Michelle didn't just fool a 19, she fooled me too. And I'll never let that happen again.